Hello, this is Professor Gabor. I want to talk about the Keen book, Chapter 5, which is communicating with business managers. And this is obviously for IT people communicating with business managers. But I think it goes both ways, communication being a two-way street, and communication being the avenue through which functional areas can improve their collaboration. And that's really what we've been talking about a lot up till now, is this collaboration. A lot of people don't like this book if you read the reviews. I actually like it because it addresses the things that I think an MBA student needs to have. And it's dealing with IT and managing IT and not being afraid of IT and not being browbeat or kowtowed to IT. So that's, I think it gives that perspective. You're not going to come out of here and know how to code things. You're not going to come out of here and be able to create an app or actually do SQL programming in SAP or actually do Python programming or R programming for big data analysis. That's not what this course is about. This course is to teach MBA students how to manage IT and IT projects from a business perspective. So, as in many of the slides that we've talked about up till now, the principles that we'll talk about in this chapter apply to many other aspects of the business. So when we say communication is a key social element of the organizational alignment between IT and business, yes, it's also the key social element of the organizational alignment between purchasing and other functions, between legal and other functions, between, you name it. It doesn't matter. Pick two functions, and communication is a way to enhance the build that social alignment, that organizational alignment, excuse me. So one of the most important skills IT staff need to develop is how to basically communicate effectively with business in a language of business. Now, this was probably more of a revelation years ago when IT people were perhaps more stereotypically programmers that had grown into IT managers. I don't think that's the case so much anymore. So in general, good communication builds trust. It builds partnerships. It helps functions manage the business perceptions of your own function. So in this case, IT. You understand the priorities and pressures of the people you're trying to work with and communicate with. So no matter what two functions, it is important for whatever function you're in to understand the priorities and pressures that the other function is dealing with. And of course, conveying the business value of IT. That's the main job, to be able to communicate that. So there's some principles of good communication. Well, the effectiveness, of course, is measured by its outcomes. It is a social behavior. It's a shared knowledge. Shared knowledge improves communication. So being open. Mature organizations have better communication. Let's elaborate on each of those. Of course, communication should be measured by its outcomes rather than the intentions of that communication. Will you do what you say you're going to do? And it can get distorted through filters such as company politics, company culture, personal points of view. A lot of times, if you're dealing with a supply chain, where I worked a large part of my life, we like to put our arms around our sandbox and really not let the rest of the business see what's going on inside the black box of the warehouse, the black box of the factory, because it's complicated. And if something is wrong or right in the warehouse or the factory, all of a sudden every CFO, every CEO, every business unit manager all of a sudden becomes an expert in manufacturing planning, inventory management, you name it. So I'm used to dealing with people that are guarded about what they share. So, and then of course, where's the gain? For some people will operate in always trying to better their career at the advantage of other people. So you have to be careful of all these things. And probably it's important to know this and emphasize this in IT as it is transformed from what was a, a world of coders, which are probably tended to be more introverted and more nerdy and less political savvy, to the modern world today. I think there's still coders and there's still nerdy folks working in that part of IT, but the management of IT has transformed into something you can study at university. You can get a business degree with a concentration in IT, either at the undergraduate or the master's level. Principle 2. Communication not only is to share ideas, but I would say beyond even negotiating relationships, it sets the relationship. It defines a relationship. It makes a relationship. This idea of trust means that if you can be counted on for what you said being true, and what you say you're going to do is getting it done, then you have a basis for a relationship. And then you can negotiate and operate more toe-to-toe with people that may have more organizational clout than you. It's all situational, if you ask me. And it depends on the leaders. It depends on your own skill sets, and your own communication skill set. So how you say what you mean is just as important as what you say. Well, I had a friend. He just graduated. He's a friend that was an MBA student. He was closer to my age than not. And we got to know each other pretty well and keep in touch with each other. He was a consultant, an IT consultant, and he was very matter of fact. He told the organization he worked at exactly what he thought was right and wrong. He's a brilliant guy. And the organization basically freaked out and terminated the relationship with him because he was pointing out all the errors that people have been doing for years. He was saying it matter of fact. He wasn't being accusatory, but these people were terrified in the culture that they worked in, and the fact that he was exposing a long-term deficiency in the IT area scared them to death. And they reacted in a way, and the organization reacted in a way that it meant the leaders had been negligent in their job for years. So even though he was telling the truth, he got fired from this gig, and to this day is still kind of bewildered why, when just frankly and basically speaking the truth, he was punched from both sides. Well, you can understand that what we're trying, the importance of how you communicate things. What you've done is great up till now. There are some things that have changed that maybe you're aware of, maybe you're not aware of. You would have probably implemented them anyway, but here's some things that I think that you can do. And if you talk with the people that are your clients, and oftentimes in IT, the people within the company that you work with are your clients. When I talk about having an IT person on my personal staff, I was his client to a certain degree. So IT staff and managers need to become aware of the power of different linguistic styles in communication situations. So let's emphasize the situations, who you're communicating with, and what quiver of tools you need in your communication toolbox, not only your IT toolbox. Well, shared knowledge improves communication. We've talked about that before. The more the business knows about IT and what is possible, and the more the IT people know what the business needs are, provides a tremendous basis for better working relationships and therefore better results. So they talk about this virtuous cycle of communication. If you have shared knowledge, you have increased communication, which leads to mutual understanding and common sense, which leads to implementation success. And it's a constant circle, which again feeds dependencies on one another and trust on one another. And you keep sharing knowledge, and this keeps happening. Notice in this picture, there's not the words IT, information systems, anywhere. It's implied because it's in a chapter of a book on IT strategy, but this applies to any functional areas that may normally not get along well together. It applies for certain between sales and supply chain, which can often be at odds, but if you employ a model like this and build it up over time, you have a tremendous relationship. All right, so the more IT staff learns about the business, the better communication becomes. The more business learns about IT, the better communication becomes. And shared knowledge is the beginning of that virtuous cycle. Here, the principle 4, mature organizations have better communication. Well, mature means that you've already figured out how to work with functional differences or functional clashes or functional disagreements, functional distrust, or you've actually overcome them and now have adopted measures that allow you to work together in ways that perhaps you hadn't before. The matrix organization is not something that works well in new organizations. It works well in mature organizations that use it and know how to employ it properly. So strong organizational practices support and reinforce good interpersonal communication, and mature IT organizations embed appropriate communication because in this case, the leaders of the IT organization haven't grown up necessarily as coders and introverted, and they've actually studied and gotten degrees in IT management in university settings and have had good experience doing that. And if you have an MBA with an IT concentration, you have an MBA, which means you understand business and you understand how IT has to function with the business. I will say one other thing. In an emerging organization, a brand new startup kind of organization, everybody kind of has to, there's no departments, there's just people. There's the IT person may be the only IT person in the small company at your startup. So even organizations that are emerging or just recently founded can have better communication only because they have to get their products and services off the ground. So what's the obstacles to effective communication? It's usually the people, but here they're talking about IT has become more complex over time. You have lots of cultures you have to operate in, different political contexts, various time zones, virtual contacts making communication more challenging, and that's exemplified in this pandemic era when I'm making this recording. No one is meeting face to face; they're meeting over Zoom, and even with Zoom, you're missing something that the face to face probably added. You're working with different cultures. You're working with different time zones. You're probably working 24/7 if you're in a global organization, and projects are passed around the world following the sun. So there's all kinds of things that happen here that you have to deal with to make the communication work well. And there's so many more tools available for collaboration. Microsoft Teams being but one, Zoom being another. Google Docs is a perfect example of a collaborative tool. I guess this is another obstacle. IT organizations can no longer support smart, super talented, but socially disruptive or socially awkward people. You can have socially disruptive and socially awkward people in the coding if you just keep them away from the rest of the business, which the rest of the business really doesn't care to meet with your coders. They want to meet with your leaders on a more strategic level. So, as I said before, as the leadership of IT organizations tend to have MBAs and advanced degrees in the management of IT, not just in the nuts and bolts coding of IT. So the hiring practices, you're looking for more consultative and collaborative rather than focused exclusively on technology. I could not run an IT organization. Maybe I could, but I know that I can run the business side of an IT project and have done so. And I have my counterpart is probably closer to me in experience and demeanor, obviously more on the IT side than on the supply chain side. But we're probably more alike than the actual people doing the programming who may be working in a job shop in another part of the world and never actually see them or talk to them. So IT and business organization structures. IT staff is expected to play a knowledge broker role, not only between IT and the business, but between business units. Thus, business silos can make this communication challenging. But IT also, as you implement, and most large companies have an ERP system already, those ERP systems tend to break down some of those silos by the reduction of people and making the processes the same across the entire operating units of the company. So IT is a knowledge broker of what is possible, but the business also knows what it needs and what it wants. And they're reading their own trade magazines, and their own trade magazines are telling them what's on the IT horizon. What can you next implement and next employ that will make your operations more productive and that's doing more basically with less people through better information management. I mean, that's the name of the game. So the communication has to be there because you're expected to move very fast. The nature and frequency of the communication. Well, you're going to have business reviews. You're going to have those formal interactions to improve communication. But it's not only in those formal interactions. It's not through IT governance. It's not through the IT budgeting process. It's in the day-to-day operations. When you embed, like I said, an IT person in my supply chain organization, like finance has embedded a finance person in my supply chain organization, those people work on a day-to-day basis directly for me, even though I'm not their functional direct line boss, I'm their dotted line boss in my own functionality. Well, therefore, we have tremendous communications. And that IT person in my organization, if it's the right kind of person, and usually I help them become that right kind of person, knows when to engage other people in IT as we have issues and need to learn more and need to communicate further. So I think this is key. It's not the formal communications. It should be on a day-to-day basis as much as possible. One of the other things they say here, we definitely need a we attitude in IT rather than us versus them. Well, you could take the letters IT out of that and put every function in the company in there. We definitely need a we attitude in supply chain rather than an us versus them attitude. We definitely need a we attitude in sales rather than an us versus them attitude. Finance, marketing, just fill in the blank. It applies to everyone. And therefore, it definitely applies to IT. IT, I think I have an affinity for them because it's somewhat like the supply chain. And most of the organization doesn't really know what happens behind the curtain or in the black box, but they're impacted by it every day. So that we attitude is important. If you're adversarial, over time the business will pretty much win out. So if we talk about this communication skills, this translation level communication skills, when you have technology issues, you have to translate them into a business issue. And what's the business impact of the technology issue? And then what's the business solution? And if you have a business solution that you're looking for, how do you translate that into IT language and make it an IT solution? So this communication, you have to kind of have some bilingual people here that can speak both the business language and the IT language. And sometimes if you speak too much IT, you will lose the business people. And if you're all business and don't understand any IT, you'll lose the IT people. So you need your key IT leadership, those interfaces that you deal with on a regular basis, need to be bilingual and understand both languages. And I think that's basically the premise and power of what they're trying to get across in this chapter. So IT, you have to adapt communication by the needs of the audience. We've talked about it already as being situational. Understanding the need, agendas, and politics. Choosing the suitable communication method. Do you do reports, face-to-face, emails, whatever? I think you have to use it all. All of it plays a role. And you have to be transparent. The business needs to see what is being done in IT and what it costs. They need to know what is capable and what it costs. They need to know that what is promised is not like a light switch. As soon as you're done, you flip the light switch, you get it. You still got to do work and process improvement to reap the benefits that the IT was sold on. There was a pause there for a purpose. I wanted that to really sink in. Communication is honest, accurate, ethical, and respectful. That applies everywhere again. And getting the communication process flowing both ways. Whenever there's functional friction, this is gold. So this is not really an organizational management course, but oh my, the amount of organizational management and organizational dynamics in the implementation and the managing of IT is pretty big. So IT staff needs to understand how and where to speak and how to listen to others. Communicating innovative ideas effectively involves getting inside the head of whoever you're trying to sell it to. Just because you see something as obvious and therefore we should do this does not mean the party that you're pitching it to has that level of understanding to see it as obviously as you do. You may have to backtrack and provide the basis for what made you leap to such a quick conclusion and give them time to digest what you're saying. And we're not talking about a crisis situation where sometimes, you just say, you can be blunt and say, if we don't do this, we will suffer these kinds of consequences. But we're talking about where there's a significant investment and people need to understand and ponder it for a while. So you want to make the importance of effective communication as visible as possible. Work with HR to develop new skill, expectations, and roles. I don't know. I think if you start hiring the right kind of people and promoting the right kind of people, they will nurture that within their own organization. Certainly you can have some seminars and whatnot about it, but it's really making it part of the organizational culture. Harder thing to do. Again, we're talking organizational dynamics here. Develop communication skills both formally and informally, and enforcing them in the way you promote people. Obviously, they have to know IT. If they don't know IT, they can't be in the IT organization. But these are the people that you're looking to make the leaders of IT that can communicate like this. and can nurture that kind of communication skills to their direct reports and the direct reports of their direct reports over time. You want to make sure that communication is frequent, and you want to increase that. Often, as I've been harping on before, embedding IT people as needed in functional areas helps achieve that goal. And as an organization, you want to spend more time on your communication and messaging. So, in conclusion, again, take the word IT out of that first bullet. Effective communication can overcome misunderstandings, dysfunctional behavior, and above all, failures to deliver fill-in-the-blank value, but in this case, IT. So, good communication has both social and organizational dimensions and benefits. And that virtuous cycle of communication can improve IT performance and perceptions of the IT value. Thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon.